Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 10th episode of What If Civilization Started Over. Now, last time we ended off with seeing Turkey's new leader switching the country to a very radical ideology and people basically beginning to be forced to pick sides, with some worried that they're not going to be able to stop Turkey and some are glad that they won't be able to be stopped. And so a lot is going to happen this episode involving this new radical ideology. And any country who is supporting it is represented by this green circle. So now, following the reign of terror from Turkey that they have induced in maybe like 2 years, probably is a realistic way to put it, we find out that the second radical leader has taken power. One of the Mediterranean countries, and I'm not gonna waste time, Carthage is now ruled by a radical leader who wishes to restore the Mediterranean greatness that Carthage once had through Iberia, and you get the picture. And this radical idea begins with Carthage first taking out these islands. I don't actually know the name of them, Ibiza, all that. Then they launch a full force attack up the coast, taking over Gibraltar, Portugal, the like Malaga, and rapidly begins taking over this country that they used to formerly own back in like episode 1. And unfortunately, this country isn't very strong. There's a reason that Rome tried taking it over in their first empire. And you might be saying, wait, what do you mean by first Roman Empire? There was only the one, because Rome becomes the third radical nation to pop up. As if you saw the title card, the hint, this has been coming for a while. Rome begins their terror with moving in through the weak Albanian nation, taking back that land, and then jumping across the sea, wiping out Albania off the map. Then Rome quickly rushes north into the Genoa nation that formed at the collapse of their first empire. Now moving back to the original radical, Turkey. Their train of conquest isn't done yet, as they make a move southwards into this gray nation, occupying it fairly quickly and growing their sphere in the Middle East. Now, I'd just like to update the alliances really quick. Obviously, Carthage is no longer in this Triangle Alliance, neither is this nation. So now the Triangle Alliance has been reduced into this. And Lime is beginning to panic about what's happening. Why is our buddy starting to kill people? As now we see the spread of the Triangle Alliance with the old Square Alliance that defeated the threats out east. We see the Danish, the Dutch, I said those backwards, and the Orange Country all joining forces with Lime, promising to protect Europe, as we also see Green Germany joining this alliance. As now the spread of radicals continues, we see a smaller radical power popping up in the northern German nation. And we also see a radical country out here in Russia, in this country. But then finally, one of our bigger radicals, Finland, becomes a radical power. A very neutral nation up until this point. Now, immediately, this new Finnish leader says that it is their destiny to own the North. And they begin that belief by invading the two practically brand new nations out to their east that had just formed And then we also see, kind of sadly, we see Latvia getting attacked without any help. And Latvia, who didn't really care about Finland, they were kind of friends before this whole rebellion thing happened, and now Latvia has been wiped off the map by Finland. And then the radicals, they just make a small choice. They make the choice that everything in this northern area that was discovered, we own that. I don't care if you think you own it, we own that now. And so now Finland becomes, I believe, the largest nation on the map, as well as one of the scariest. Then we see a bit of a peace deal going on. Rome is handed back the old lands that they used to own, that Carthage had taken, because now these guys are buddies. They went from enemies to friends. Now we see a friend betraying a friend. As we know, Macedonia has kind of benefited from Turkey not liking Bulgaria. Now this stays true, except Turkey, now the new leader, believes that this is your payment, basically. You helped us beat Bulgaria, you become us now. And Turkey rushes into Macedonia, taking the capital and forcing it to surrender in days. Now, this northward offensive doesn't stop, because we were just talking about Turkey. They don't like Bulgaria, or the Grey Country. And so now Turkey launches an offensive into their capital, cutting off the coast and occupying the entire nation. Now we see the Romans, obviously they're kind of cornered. They just take over this pink one. I'm not going to go into details. It's a random country that has barely existed. They take it over. Now Turkey's kind of conquest is not over yet, as over in the east, this blue country, if you remember, used to be part of Turkey. Then it broke away. Then it got captured by the yellow country, and now it broke away again. But Turkey says, no, you're ours. There's just no question in their mind about it. And with a siege, they rush in on the capital, and honestly, this purple country didn't really stand a chance, and so Turkey fully occupies it. Now, we have one of the weaker radical countries over here in Russia, but they do take advantage of an even weaker neighbor in this blue one, rushing up north and taking it over. Pretty simple as that. Now, if you recall, Carthage just had a war with Egypt. They still remember that. And instead of holding back, right here, just taking that little bit, Carthage launches a full-scaled invasion into Egypt, taking it all over, because Egypt is much weaker. We discussed this last time. And they rush in, they take over the Egyptian nation, fully occupying it. As now, over in Asia, we see the forming of our final radical nation, and it's the Purple China. A country who has basically been quiet since they formed, now turns on the jets, I guess. They're going at it, and they begin with invading north on the trade route into their kind of satellite state, occupying that, but then they also go ahead and take over this gold country. Not sure what the gold country did, but they take it. Now, China, who is nearly a top 10 power at this point, without the support of this new ideology, they rush south in order to take over all of China. And they do. They successfully get rid of the first Chinese nation with little to no resistance, and then the yellow one follows suit shortly thereafter, falling into the hands of the new purple Chinese leader. Now, this panic sets Korea to immediately join the Triangle Alliance, as well as down south, we see the blue Southeast Asian nation, and then brown India joining the Triangle Alliance. And then, most shockingly of all, the red trade route nation. Now, the reason this is so shocking to a lot of people is because the red trade nation, they literally just went on a huge conquest of all the neighbors around them. But clearly, they're not in support of this radical ideology either. Now, unfortunately, due to them not joining an alliance, Rome goes ahead and launches an attack into the blue Bosnian nation. And everyone not wanting to spark a war, nobody joins them to help because they would cause global chaos. And the loss of this nation affects a lot of people, especially these guys up here. And it sucks because they are one of the oldest nations, but their ignorance just got the better of them, believing that they are safe enough to not need to join the Triangle Alliance, as now they are wiped off of the map. As now we see the continued rampage of Finland moving in, taking this extremely, extremely weak, purplish country in the north, and then instead of attacking Sweden, they jump across the sea and take over the former capital nation because they know that most of the military jumped ship to the dark green Sweden, and so they know that it would be a tough fight against them because Finland is ranked 7th. This Sweden is ranked 10th. But now the entire world kind of comes to a standstill. The radical nations, especially Carthage and Rome, have no wishes to invade into here. They can, but Rome, blocked in by the alliances. Turkey has no need to invade these nations. They don't want to. Finland knows the risk of invading. This green country knows that they're weaker than basically everyone around them and that they are extremely stupid for ever switching to this ideology. And China knows that if they attack this way, they get stuck and they can't attack Korea without. Like, they would beat these two, no doubt, but when the war in Europe inevitably finishes up, they know that they would collapse, and so the entire world kind of comes to a standstill. And now, the Triangle Alliance, they know they need to get rid of this radical threat, especially in Europe. And they devise a plan. In this capital city, they stage an attack, claiming that Rome attacked them. And immediately the first front of the war is opened, and this purple nation is able to kind of push into the unprepared Roman lands, kind of push a little tiny bit up into here, and then Rome finally builds up troops along the line. However, Rome, not able to defend on multiple fronts, realize they have made a mistake and they call in support. However, this is an ambush that, whether Rome likes it or not, is going to end badly for them. Because up in the north, the green German nation pushes rapidly, cutting off this front line and cutting off Genoa from the rest of Rome. As we see lime green France taking over that piece of land, we also see up in the north, we'll just be honest, this one falls. Immediately when they join the war, the green, the Dutch, the Danish, all wipe them out. As now moving over this way, the Orange Nation. They are able to make decent pushes into the north, into the former Bulgarian lands. They also push pretty deep into the Roman lands across the Adriatic. As now Carthage joins into the war. Now, these two Iberian nations, they are outnumbered by Carthage, and Carthage knows this, sends a spearhead up this way, cutting off the yellow one, pushes into the yellow one, takes the yellow one, then pushes into the purple one, and takes the purple one, bordering the two strongest nations in this alliance, in this war, are now bordering each other. Over here, we're just going to clear this up. Green country dies to red country very easily. There's basically no debate about that. But now Finland decides this is it. I'm going to take my opportunity. They begin a southward invasion into the Swedish territories, getting pretty far until they learn there's Danish troops here defending it. And Sweden is able to push these guys out of their homeland in the south, as Denmark is now involved in this front. We see Denmark, the Danish Empire, beginning to... What the heck? There we go. They begin to push northward, trying to circle off the Finnish claims, as they do begin to push in to the old Swedish land. However, the front kind of stops there and stalemates. But then here comes a betrayal. Turkey rushes in, taking Roman lands away from them in order to spearhead up, basically one blow, capturing this nation, and they're able to neutralize the front and begin pushing these guys out of their territory, as they actually push them pretty far back in the western side of the front. Over in Asia, utilizing this small strip of pink land and some land next to it, the blue country makes an invasion into China, who is not knowing that the war has started, being so far away from any communication, and they make some pretty good moves up into China, for China being pretty strong. But you forget, they're not top 10. And you want to know who is? I don't know if I said it, but Korea is. And now suddenly the front of the war is the brunt of the force pushing right towards the capital of China. And that's where the Asian front is going to be left off for now. Now, in this current situation, it definitely looks like the Triangle Alliance is winning. And you'd be right. In fact, we see up north in Finland, up north in Sweden, Finland is able to regain the land that they grabbed and push into the Danish-Norway claims. But it still appears that, Triangle Alliance is winning, which is technically true, yes. But Carthage launches a large-scale attack northwards into Lime Green when they weren't expecting it, gaining quite a bit of land, and then they reoccupy this piece of Rome for them, reconnecting Rome, who pushes up north into the green German nation. Not too far, though. We see over here the orange country continues to get pushed back. They're struggling on the front, and in fact, Turkey is kind of able to push them into their own territory, pushing pretty far into the orange nation's land. But then after probably a good 2 years of fighting on this front in Sweden, Finland is able to push through, breaking through the line, rushing, and Sweden is forced to surrender, as we see Finland is able to completely basically push the Danish out of Norway, except for like the Oslo area. And now the tide of the war is beginning to look in the favor of the radicals. Now let's switch back to the Asian front. The blue country, who is the strongest southeastern nation, continues pushing up into China, even boosting rebellions over in former blue Chinese lands, which is successful, as now up in the north, Korea continues their push towards the Chinese capital, as we see the gold country break away. Like, they come back again. Now we continue and we see the blue country pushing faster and faster up the Chinese front, and it's official. The Chinese forces would surrender, though an elite group of militias for the leader would be like, no, we're not surrendering. A big battle would go down in the capital, yada yada yada. But they would beat them. China would be defeated. And now suddenly, you have the force of all of this part of Asia no longer focusing on Asia. They are rushing in along the trade route into the Europe front. And this is obvious because suddenly Finland begins to get pushed back out of Danish and Swedish land, and I'm just gonna color it all purple for now. We'll fix it later. As now we see the continued push of Danish forces, but at a very specific battle in a small village right here, Finland realizes why they're getting pushed back so far, because they see the Asian troops that have come in droves to basically triple the size of the Danish army. However, I guess Southern Europe just didn't get the memo because Turkey pushes even deeper into Orange territory. And Rome captures the capital of the Green German nation, pushing ridiculously far into their territory. We also see Carthage pushing further up into lime green French territory, and it's looking pretty desperate for these countries. But now the tide of the war changes. The Red Country, now kind of just a bystander casualty, the Red Country takes over this dark brown nation in order to, in order to get a front with Finland there. I don't know why I couldn't put my words on it. And with the help from Asian forces, rapidly, because Finland was not defending this front. Basically, all of the mainland European side of Finland is captured before defense troops at the walls of the capital stop Red from advancing any further. But now, with troops scrambling, we're just gonna make it obvious, the Danish push Finland out of Sweden and any land they've occupied, and they also begin rapidly chasing these retreating troops. And suddenly now Finland has been reduced back to what was its pre-Civil War size. Or, that's a bad way to say it. The Red Country pushes up around this lake, pushes up the north, connecting with Danish troops, and Finland surrenders. The leader was found nowhere in office, and so the old leader took emergency control of the nation, surrendering. And now the tide of the war has changed, because there is no troops in the north of Europe. There's no troops in Asia. They can finally focus on Europe, and it was a necessary change. Because we see Lime, they finally begin to push back in their territory. And I'm just going to represent all of this by Lime, and we'll go from there. They regain their territory, some of Purple's territory, and begin to push into Rome, who is caught by surprise by the force of France's recovery, I guess, as France is able to push, reclaiming most of the purple nation as well. The comeback is also shown by Green Germany reclaiming all of their land and beginning to also push into Rome, as French and German troops together get stopped at this front. But then we see the return of this nation. Obviously, the color's not going to be perfect, but whatever, it'll be fixed after the war, assuming they win. And they push back, reclaim their territory. The Orange Country begins pushing back into the territory that they lost to Turkey. And for the first time I'd just like to put some perspective on this. This war, for the time period, has probably been going on for at least 100 years at this point. All the back and forth that has happened, the fact that the troops from Korea had to travel, that probably took a long time. This war has probably been going on for, at minimum, like half a century, at most a full century. However, the pace of the war has changed now as the Orange Country is able to rapidly push southward, reclaiming the Bosnian nation, pushing down into where the Grey Nation was, pushing into modern day Greece, and pushing into Thrace, and pushing up to the borders of Constantinople, the capital of Turkey, which for like the fifth time is under siege in its lifetime. And so that's kind of where the Turkish front gets left, because this city is very heavily guarded. It's one of the first like major cities that ever formed. Turning off the Radical Alliance stuff for now, we see the push of lime green into the old gold northern Iberian nation, and we see the old light green Iberian nation. They break away with help from France, and that's kind of where the front stops, unable to cross the Mediterranean safely. We see Green Germany and Lime Green pushing, they take Rome, and Rome this time is fully occupied, as now forces from Lime and Green Germany jump the river, taking over the Carthage capital, and Carthage would surrender, being split in two with literally no military on this side, and they're basically nothing military on this side, being trapped. The nation would surrender. So now, looking at the Radicals map, there's only one left, and it's Turkey. And with basically every force now helping Orange, they are easily able to jump over, take Cyprus, move in through Carthage, all of this. And I'm just gonna skip the pain and the drama of it all. Turkey would surrender. They would go from being almost the strongest nation in the world to gone, as now the Triangle Alliance has won. But this video is already long enough, and so in the next episode we will discuss the details of how the treaty goes.